Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and today's video is going to be a carry tier list for patch 7.37e, and this patch has been out for a couple weeks now, a few weeks, maybe almost a month actually, and I doubt they're going to patch it again before the new year. So we have some time with this patch, we had some time to figure out the meta, and now you're going to have some time to take advantage of these broken heroes. So without further delay, let's talk about the S tier carry heroes this patch, and the first one is going to be Spectre. This hero was already on the upswing in the last patch, but then with every single carry getting nerfed basically from last patch, this hero has risen to the top. Now, in Pro Dota, I'm not 100% sure how great this hero is. I still think it's good, but basically in all pubs, this hero is just insane. It's broken. It's great. You can pick it pretty much every single game, and it's great because you have like a late game build. You can go Radiance, you can go Blade Mail Radiance. I already did a build and a guide last week for this hero. I just think it has so many options where you can just go for that late game farming style and then just take over the game later when you get your like 3 or 4 items, or you can fight a lot early game. I think you're going to be fighting regardless with this off cooldown anytime your team fights, but if your team is fighting more, you can go for the Orchid and the Manta and just going full fighting build if you feel like that's what you need to do, or you don't really have time to get the Radiance, those kinds of things. So you have those options. I think just overall, this hero does insane amounts of damage. It really just melts Roche, it melts supports, and when you do go for that Orchid and you do go for those pick-off items, anytime anybody shows in vision, especially if you're winning the game and you have a lot of map control, the enemy just can't do anything. They can't show anywhere. And with the map being so big now, and there being so many camps on the map, you can just kind of pick a little corner of the map, even if you're losing, and just feel safe in like farming 4 camps a minute even, and then like a wave, and you're going to be fine, you're going to be safe, it's going to be hard to pick you off, and then you can always show up to fight. So it's very, very hard to stop this hero. You're not going to be farming as quickly as like an Alchemist or some of these other heroes. So you do have to be careful of early game timings. But in most pubs, like those, early game timings don't really happen. Like people are going to be delaying. They're going to be throwing. You're going to have time to get to that 30, 40 minute mark where you have 4 items and you absolutely delete everybody in the game. Now, you need to be careful of heroes like Viper or obviously PA with the break because they can jump in on you and kill you. But there's a lot of ways to play around that with this hero, so I think this hero is just so good later in the game and so good early with participating in fights that it's very hard to pick a hero that's better. I mean, you're just so reliable overall with this hero. It's just very, very good right now. Not much else to say. If you want to know more just in general about the hero, go check out my guide and my build video. So that's Spectre, pretty great hero right now. Honestly, the amount of damage you do with Desolate is just ridiculous. Like, it's absurd. When you get Bloodthorn too, like Bloodthorn will just melt every single hero in the game. You'll do infinity damage if they can't purge the Bloodthorn. Then next we have Alchemist, and this hero was actually really good last patch as well, but they kind of nerfed it, but the nerfs didn't really do much. It was like a little bit of cooldown on Unstable Concoction with Mixologist, which people don't pick anyway, and then like Acid Spray Mana, I think it was, and it wasn't really a big deal. Like overall, the hero still did what the hero does, and gets a lot of farm early, still is actually a pretty good laner now that you can pick this and just go Unstable Concoction first. Like everything that it does, nothing changed drastically about the way the hero works. So it's still very, very good, and that's why it's kind of come out on top as the best carry from last patch, transitioning over into this patch. And yeah, there's nothing really else to say about Alchemist. You pretty much do all those same things you used to do. You get Radiance really quickly, you maybe buy Blink, BKB, maybe SNY, maybe Manta if you really need to. You just like, by 25 minutes have 3 or 4 items and you just can end the game. Now that's kind of the risk with the hero though, is in a lot of different pubs. Yes, you'll get the free farm, but your team is kind of dumb and they won't group up with you and they won't really end the game. So that is a little bit of a risk. But again, this hero does scale well into the late game. You can still get 5, 6 items. You can still gift ags. So it doesn't fall off as hard as it once, used to in the past. So I still think it's a really, really good hero. I think at some mid-tier MMRs, it's harder to get farm. People aren't stacking for you. It's a little bit more difficult, but it's still very, very good overall. Then next we have Morphling, and this hero is kind of like the Alchemist hero where they didn't really nerf it very much. I mean, this hero didn't get touched at all in terms of specific nerfs on the hero. Really, Conda was the only thing that got nerfed to make the hero worse from last patch. But Conda isn't a build that you have to go every time to make the hero viable. Like, you can just go normal carry items and it's fine. You could just skip the Conda altogether, and you can still even go it, and it still does insane damage. I think really the reason this hero is so good is because you don't have to put many points in attribute shift early. Like 1 point is enough to sustain in lane for the most part, unless you're against like super hard counters or something like that. But even like 15, 20 minutes into the game, people will have 1 point in this, maybe only 2, something like that. So I think that's why the hero is so good. And then with everything else being nerfed, like I said, it just kind of rose to the top as being really good, being that quintessential Smurf hero, obviously. But it's not like it was maybe a year or so ago when the ultimate, stole 60% of people's stats or something like that. It was ridiculous and absurd and kind of broken in this annoying way. That's not what's happening now. It's just overall the hero's numbers are all really good. You are great in lane, you farm very quickly, and you delete people later, and you're very hard to deal with. Just like normally, most normal morphlings, how you kind of think of the hero in general. It's just really good, kind of not the best it's ever been, but like with the stats and what it does overall at the peak of what it usually is when Morphling is broken. And then lastly, we have Dragon Knight. So I was debating putting Dragon Knight in S tier actually because the win rate has dropped off kind of significantly despite getting literally 0 nerfs. Like the item wasn't touched that this hero goes, like no items were touched. It was just Conda. This hero doesn't go Conda. And then the hero wasn't touched at all in the last patch, and it was already a pretty good carry. But I think it's getting picked a ton, and so sometimes when that happens, the win rate kind of falls off a little bit. But that's why I'm putting it at S. I think it does still deserve it. It is like an Alchemist where it didn't really get nerfed and it's kind of risen to the top, but it isn't maybe. I would still rather pick like a Spectre maybe in the patch just because I think Spectre is so good in most pubs and just in general. But DK is definitely very viable. You still go the red facet. You still cleave and farm super quickly. You still go for the same build as last time, which is Armlet, Mask of Madness, SNY, BKB, and then Daedalus, and you just, hit for 1 billion damage. Very hard to deal with your ult, that kind of stuff. It's really no different than it was. It's just still good because it didn't get nerfed at all. Then moving on to A tier, we have some of the ranged heroes that were either good last patch or kind of are rising up with a lot of the ranged heroes getting nerfed because last patch it was really a ranged carry kind of patch. And this patch is still sort of similar, but you can see, 2 of the best carries are not ranged. Yes, they build Radiance, so it is kind of a Radiance patch in that way, but ranged heroes are still very, very good. A lot of the melee carries aren't nearly as good, but they are kind of getting better. So the first one is Drow. Drow was on the upswing for sure. Maybe this hero was B or C tier last time, but because a lot of the ranged heroes got nerfed, this hero has kind of risen to the top as being, oh wait, this hero is actually pretty good. It was on the verge of being good. And now, with no other ranged heroes to pick, really, because all of them are bad, this hero is very, very good right now and goes through a lot of this, like, armor in DK. A lot of the stuff that you want to go through can buy break for Spectre, can buy a lot of the items that you want against a lot of the different matchups that you have in this patch. Also, the Shard, is pretty good. It wasn't maybe amazing, that's why it wasn't broken before, but now that everything is kind of evened out and things have gotten nerfed, I think the Shard ends up being pretty good where you kind of stand on that hill and shoot people. Also, it's nice with the facet to be able to walk while you're channeling. That's pretty cool too. There's just some things about the hero that are decent, maybe not broken, but if it does get another buff, which I don't think it will because it's good enough now, but if it does, it's definitely going to be S tier. Then we have Gyro. This hero seems to be always having like a bad win rate in pubs whenever it is good, and there's really no exception right now, but it is a very, very good carry hero. Again, doesn't do anything crazy different or new. I think just it is a good ranged hero. It kind of fills the role of Luna or Medusa, but just not as nerfed as maybe those heroes. We do see Medusa is still definitely viable. But Gyro does all the same things that it did before. It farms very quickly. He can build late game items and then eventually get a rapier. And he also has that addition to his kit where he's able to do more damage with his ultimate and with a shard, where it kind of mixes in a little bit of that magic damage, and having that magic damage early on in lane is definitely helpful as well. So Gyro is just kind of pretty good right now as a ranged carry. And then Medusa, yes, she fell off. I think people at first thought she fell off a lot, but then actually realized, okay, she's actually not as bad as we thought. It still is very hard to kill. Yes, it's not as tanky as it was, but the change is not super noticeable with that. It doesn't do as much damage as it used to, with the reduction on split shot damage, but it's still very, very good. It's very viable, especially in certain matchups. I think it's a little bit more matchup dependent now. It's not like you can just pick Medusa every single game. You do have to be a little bit wary. Yes, usually in most drafts you're picking second, so you're only going to see the supports, but sometimes you can have games where you're like, okay, Medusa really sucks this game, and then some games where like Medusa is insane. So that's why I think this hero is kind of on the upswing, where we can see some of the heroes from last patch, other heroes that were very good are not so good now. They kind of got destroyed, and Medusa is faring decently, probably the best of all of the heavily nerfed heroes from last patch. Then we have Bristleback. I think this hero is really still great as a carry. You can farm super quickly. You do insane damage. Maybe it's not broken like maybe it was before. I can't remember where I put this hero last time, but I think this hero is still very good, and it still does all the same things it used to do. I think the shard was nerfed a little bit. Some of the things about it were nerfed, but it still does overwhelming damage. It still pushes towers extremely fast once you get all those stacks. The Ags is still able to be rushed, and you delete people with it. It, you know, does all of those same things. Maybe it's a little bit more matchup dependent than it was, or, you know, obviously it's always been matchup dependent. The breaks definitely killed the hero, and you do have to be wary of some matchups. But again, like, this hero is just overall really, really great right now for the reasons that it's been good in the last patch as well. Then we have Ursa, a Battle Fury builder that's probably one of the best traditional carries. It was that same way in the last patch. The problem with the hero is it doesn't hit buildings very well, but it fights great. It does Roche. It team fights amazing. It farms very quickly. I don't think you're going to go anything but Battle Fury on this hero for the most part in the carry position, but we've even seen this hero being picked, like in some pubs, people will pick it like off lane as an experiment, or even like mid and stuff like that, and go for these other items that aren't Battle Fury. And because of that, I mean, the fact that that's even happening, and the fact that you have these options to go like full carry build or this like weird full tank build where you just have unlimited ults and unlimited shard Qs where you can just jump around and not die ever, but you don't do a ton of damage. The fact that you have those options, I think, gives this hero that flexibility that it needs to be pretty good in pubs. I obviously really like the hero overall. I just think that, yeah, like I said, for your pubs, you have to be careful because ending the game is hard because it doesn't hit buildings. Then next we have Lifestealer, and this hero was probably maybe C tier last patch. That's where I put it, I think. And it's been on the rise now when people have realized, oh wait, this hero is actually pretty good. You can buy Radiance pretty much every game on the hero, and you can go for these like really, really tanky builds where you're super hard to bring down. You can buy a BKB, you buy Radiance, you can even buy like Heart on the hero. It's kind of insane. You buy AC, you do tons of damage. You can jump into people with your Ags, but then you're also like I said, so hard to deal with, and you counter a lot of these heroes that I think people are realizing, especially in pubs, that the early game problems that it has with laning, you can obviously get through that a lot easier when you're not playing in the pros. Like, that's pretty much just the long and short of it. So you can take advantage of the strengths later and absolutely dominate games. I think it is somewhat matchup dependent. You do have to be careful in some matchups, but for the most part, this hero can just dominate now. I think people have kind of figured out the build a little bit too with that, with that Radiance. Because before, people weren't sure, do I go Armlet and like Deso? Do I go Radiance? I think Radiance just is the build. You definitely go Ags for sure, like third or fourth item on the hero, and that's pretty much how people are thinking about the hero in general. It's definitely risen to the top here in this last patch with a lot of other things being nerfed. And then we have PA. I think last patch I also said PA was an A tier hero in pubs. Again, I don't know how great the hero is at like 10k MMR or even in pros. It's not getting picked a ton in pros, if at all. But I think this is more for you guys as pub players, and even on Dota 2 Pro Tracker, we can see this hero is getting picked. This hero is pretty good right now. I would say, and I've said this in my other video that I made, that I would go for Veiled One every single time, and that's more of what I would do if I was in pretty much any MMR that isn't like high MMR, like Immortal 8k plus or whatever, because I just think it's so much better when you're losing to be able to farm the side lanes and all that kind of stuff and be a little safer. And you can also switch targets and stuff like that a lot easier. Now, I think the reason this hero is more viable in the higher MMRs is because having the facet where you're able to just focus on a target and guarantee crits is very good for farming. It's also very good for just participating early and making sure you're getting the damage out that you need, but you're relying a little bit more on your team. You're not doing as much overwhelming damage. And I do think that even with that build, you can go Deso, but for the most part, you should be going Deso every game. So watch that other video that I made last week or a couple weeks back about this hero, because I think that's the main way you should be playing this hero. And if you do play that way, you can 1v5 games like in most cases. There are certain matchups where it feels kind of bad to play PA, like against Axe, it doesn't feel great sometimes. You still have your shard, which is very good, but if you do get caught out, you can die. Sometimes playing against like Medusa isn't the best, so there are these matchups that feel a little awkward, but some matchups you absolutely melt. Like Spectre's really good right now, but you can actually destroy Spectre in a lot of matchups. You can destroy the Dragon Knight, those kinds of things. So PA's a great pub stomping hero right now. I think definitely deserves the A tier. Then next we have B tier. We have TA. This hero kind of is on the upswing as more of like a ranged carry. Yes, it's sort of melee, sort of range. It's kind of awkward, but it's getting more popular. It's definitely decent right now. It's kind of on the upswing like a Drow, just maybe not as good. There are some weaknesses. You do get 6 slotted pretty early. You have these timings where after that you kind of fall off and you're very, very glass cannon-y, almost like the Shadow Fiend was in the previous patch, but just a little bit better now. So nothing crazy to talk about for the hero. You know, it does the same things it always does, farms very quickly, clears waves and jungle and stacks and all that kind of stuff, but it does sort of the same job as Alchemist in a way, just maybe not as good, and doesn't have the late game scaling that maybe an Alchemist would. Then we have Slark. This hero's kind of hovered around A, B tier for the past, I don't know, maybe year or so. It's not been like nerfed or buffed heavily in any significant way. It just kind of sits here as a decent hero. I think the same thing is true. The weird thing about Slark though, and I've played a lot of this hero, I do like the hero, but it feels like you can either dominate pubs and absolutely destroy pubs because people don't know how to deal with you, or once you get up to, you know, a decent MMR, it feels a little bit awkward because you do have to somewhat rely on your team. Like if your team is picking a lot of backliners, ranged heroes, it feels like you don't have a lot of options. You like have to go refresher almost, and then you even run out of mana a lot because you just have to be able to fight in your ultimates. And if you need to pop your ultimate like every single time to hit anybody, that can feel really, really bad. And that's what I mean about relying on your teammates to like go in and distract for you so you can hit the back lines so you don't have to pop your ultimate all the time. And that's what can feel weird about the hero. You also like to build all these like early game items, which is weird. You know, there's a lot of early game items the hero likes to go. You're not going like straight for these big items, like maybe a Gyro would or a Spectre. So that can feel awkward as well because it feels like you get slotted super early and those items that you're buying are not the best items. So that's why the hero can feel awkward, but it's still very, very good. Good in pubs, especially lower MMR pubs, this hero will absolutely destroy. Then we have Jug. I think for, you know, melee carries, it's just like middle of the road. It's fine. You can go Battle Fury. I think that's probably the better build right now, but you can go Maelstrom too. You can just go general Jug items. There's nothing crazy to say about the hero. The hero isn't broken. It's not trash. It just feels bad in some matchups where the only time you can hit people is in your ultimate, and then if you use your ultimate, you're done. That's the only real problem with the hero. So it is a little bit matchup dependent in that way. But hey, if you can get your farm, if you can get a few items, you can farm extremely quickly, and in a lot of games you can push towers early, or you can even fight late game, and it's pretty good. It's just like middle of the road. I'd still rather have a nurse, I'd still rather have a PA, but if you can't pick one of those, or they're banned or whatever, you feel like Jug is maybe a better matchup in, you know, that specific game, it's still decent. Then Monkey King. This hero's been played more like as a mid, I would say. Now, from the mid lane, it is matchup dependent, but you can definitely play it as a carry. You're just kind of going all in on the carry Monkey King. I think it's just average, it's middle of the road, more of a support or a mid laner these days. But you do buy carry items from the mid anyway. It's just that when you do pick Monkey Carry, it feels awkward because a lot of these carries these days are like Alchemist or Spectre or Lifestealer going Radiance or something like that. Or you're going Battle Fury Ursa or Battle Fury PA, or you have the built-in Battle Fury obviously with DK. You have these heroes that are going like these farming items. DK can build the Battle Fury, but I mean, MK can build the Battle Fury, but it's just a little bit awkward. You'd almost rather go for other items like Echo Saber and stuff, but then it feels like you're not farming as quickly. That's, I think, the reason why the carry version of the hero is a little awkward. Then we have Kez. I think this hero could either be A or B tier, depending on what you think. People were like, oh, Kez got nerfed, like last time I did the tier list. He's not A. I think I was going to put him A again, actually, but I think he's kind of evened out to B. I still think there are games where he can stomp, but he's very glass cannon-y. If you know how to play him and you know what you're doing, I think you can just destroy. I think people are still underrating the hero a little bit, but like I said, he does have matchups where he just gets melted and he doesn't do a lot of damage, and you have to get off the ground quickly. I'm also not sure if this hero is a mid or a carry. It's hard to really say. I've seen good things from, you know, both Kez's. I've seen bad Kez's both ways. I still think the win rate is kind of pushed down or artificially lower because people are playing the hero wrong still. I still think that's probably a reason for the hero to not have the best win rate. I think if people were picking it in the right matchups or, you know, going the right build every single time, I still think this hero is like pretty good, but I'm going to put it as at B. Maybe it's still even A. I think you still go Battle Fury and stuff from the carry position. I've seen people being, you know, picking this hero and going Deso and stuff like that, but I think that's almost more of a mid build. But who knows? Maybe you can go that from the carry. I just feel like you're not going to farm the best with that, but still, you can kind of experiment. I think they're still figuring out the best build for this hero. Then we have Marcy. This hero is kind of like a decent carry. That's why I put it at B. The win rate is decent. I think it's more of like an off lane, even more of a support, because you can just like kill people with one item with just BKB. But I've also seen games where you can just like annihilate people with this hero. You can even pick this hero mid at pretty much any core position right now. And that's why I think it's just like B in any core position, to be honest. It's just like middle of the road. It's not a grief, but it's not like broken. And you kind of do the same thing either way. You go in, you press your ultimate, and you just like one-shot people. That's pretty much what you do, but without an ultimate, you don't do very much, and that's pretty much the long and short of the hero, to be honest. Then we have the kind of cheesy heroes of the patch. We have Lone Druid, Broodmother, Meepo, and then Clinks is kind of a cheesy one too. I think all of these cheese heroes are just okay. They're not broken, they're not great, they're just okay. So Lone Druid, Broodmother, and Meepo, you can all pick them if you're good at them, if you know what you're doing. They're not going to stomp every game. They're very matchup dependent in a lot of games, but you know, like I said, it's just middle of the road in that way. And then Clinks is sort of one of those too. I think the lower MMR you go with Clinks, the more this hero stomps, because people don't know how to deal with this Invis hero running around doing infinity damage. You can go like Bloodthorn first item and stuff like that. It's just like absurd. Or like Deso, Bloodthorn, that kind of stuff. But again, that's a little bit awkward, a little bit cheesy, glass cannony. Like, you're not going to win every game like that when you get into like the Immortal bracket or like even Divine bracket, maybe even above 4K. It's not going to work every single game. And so that's why it's kind of a cheesy hero. Then we have C tier. And C tier, we have Shadow Fiend. So this hero was nerfed pretty decently. I was joking that it was buffed, and it was buffed in one sense. The skill that nobody skilled at all was buffed, and that skill is still not that great. But overall, it was nerfed enough. I think really the two nerfs that were the biggest were obviously the damage early on if you get a kill in lane, and if you die too, it doesn't persist with the facet there. But I don't think that's the biggest deal for most pubs. I think really just the fact that the damage overall was nerfed is a big deal. Like, you don't get as much damage with the souls. I think that's like the biggest thing, where before you were like 2 or 3 shotting supports when you get to that point, at 25 minutes or whatever it is. Now you like need a couple more hits. And yes, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's enough time for people to get Force Staffs off and Glimmer Capes and do all these other things. And this hero is one of those where it is so glass cannony. You are kind of sitting in the front there and just like hitting people, and if you get gone on, if they use all their spells on you, you probably will die. So you want to be deleting people as quickly as possible. You want to have like overwhelming damage. And right now, the damage can be overwhelming in some games, especially if you're ahead, but it's not as broken as it was. And so that's why it's kind of fallen off a lot. The win rate has taken a big hit. It's maybe not the worst tier. I definitely think it's still viable. Maybe even C tier is a little bit like underselling it in a way, because I see people picking it still. It might even be, B tier still, but it's definitely not as good as it once was. Then Muerta's kind of all in on that one style of like magic damage and just critting people to death and not being able to get, attacked. I mean, that's pretty much what the hero does. And sometimes that can be like hard countered. Sometimes it can just straight up 1v5. And that's the long and short of the hero, to be honest. Nature's Prophet, a little bit awkward. This hero is kind of always a carry no matter what position you pick it in, really. But it just feels like there are other better ranged carries, other better carries, and it doesn't out carry a lot of these heroes. And that's really honestly the thing about the hero. It's really good at split pushing, but split pushing in a lot of ways is kind of, I wouldn't say dead, but it's not as good. Like, Spectre is going to be way better to counter the split push, and so that's a really good hero. Well, Nature's Prophet is not going to be great against that. So there's a lot of heroes like that. Even Dawnbreaker right now, great against split push, so Nature's Prophet's countered by that. Like, the best heroes in the patch counter Nature's Prophet and his ability to split push if the game is bad. Weaver, I think, is good if you're like a specialist hero and or a specialist Weaver player and you know what you're doing. I think this hero can be very, very good in a lot of pubs and delete people, delete supports, delete even like carries and stuff. But it is another glass cannon ranged hero. It's kind of like an SF. Yes, you have more mobility, so you are able to like jump in and out like a Slark or something like that. But if you do get caught, yes, you have your ultimate, but you will get blown up, because for the most part, I think this hero should be built where you're just doing overwhelming, insane damage. You should be going like Deso and stuff like that. I don't really like the Maelstrom build as much. I like just going Deso and stuff because you can get your shard, and if you don't know the shard on this hero, every time you Sakuchi creeps or even a hero, and then you get out of Sakuchi, you will do a Geminate attack. So basically, when you get Deso and even like crit, you can like one-shot creep waves, which I think is great for farming. And then later in the game, you just like Sakuchi in and you get like 4 shots on the enemy hero. You get your Sakuchi shot, your Geminate attack, and then I think you get one more Geminate attack, and that does more damage, and you can literally delete every hero in the game. But if they catch you out, like I said, you will die. So that's, I think, the kind of long and short of the hero, the all-in nature, the glass cannon nature, and that's why it's a little bit risky. But if you know what you're doing, you can definitely win games. Then Razor is kind of an awkward one. This is more of like an anti-carry carry. So if you have other like carry heroes in the mid and off lane, this is a viable pick, but it's not the best overall. I'd rather pick this in probably another position, mid or off lane. Troll Warlord is okay. I think this hero like rises up to B-ish, maybe even A tier sometimes. Like I think a couple patches ago, maybe 6 months ago, it was like okay, and I'm like, no, it's not great, and I hate the ultimate, and then it drops back down. It doesn't even really get nerfed, and it just drops back down. People realize, yeah, it's not that good. And so the same thing is true. Nothing super different. It's not like the worst hero of all time. You do have matchups where you can just take over the game and just delete towers and no one can deal with you, but that's kind of rare. Then anti-mage is okay. People are picking it a bunch, but the win rate is very bad. I think the biggest problem with this hero is it is matchup dependent. Against a lot of tanky heroes, it doesn't do very much. The facet's kind of awkward. Like you want both facets, so the one reflects the stuff for your E, your like counter spell, but then the other one doesn't reflect them, and then you get more damage. It's just like it's a little bit awkward. You kind of want both things. The Ags is awful. Like the old Ags is way better. And so the new Ags is just like really weird and doesn't feel like it does anything. Like in certain matchups, of course it does something, but it just doesn't feel great. You'd rather have these illusions jumping around and annoying people, where now you don't have that anymore. So I think that's the biggest reason why this hero is not that good. But against Medusa or some other, specific heroes, it can be pretty good. Then we have Chaos Knight, just middle of the road. Not the best, still viable in some ways. I feel like this hero is more of like an offlane these days, or even kind of venturing on support in a way. I think look out for CK4 position in some kind of future patch. I'm just saying, look out for that with that one facet that allows you to like silence and break people. Just look out for it. Then we have Wraith King. This hero is the loser of last patch, got nerfed a bunch, wasn't even getting picked that much, I feel like. Was more of like a pub stomping hero in like 2K MMR or whatever. And now, I mean, you can still pick it, I guess, but I feel like it's still almost even better as an offlaner still. And as a carry, it just feels like, what are you doing as a carry? And that same thing with Terrorblade too. Like both of these heroes, you might as well just pick them as offlaners because they're almost better as offlaners. And when you have them as your like carry and you're going all in on them to like do a bunch of damage and get all the farm, it feels like they're underwhelming. And they can just get easily countered. So that's why, like, just pick Wraith King probably in the offlane position, and even Terrorblade. Terrorblade's a really good offlaner right now because you can, like, build pipe, and you get that regen on the one of his skills, so you can just, like, pop your illusions and then have, like, infinity regen with the pipe. And that's why this hero's viable, because you can go that build and then build into, like, more carry items, but you're not being relied on as the carry. And then you also have your save, which you can save yourself or allies with your ultimate. And then it's a cheesy hero. You can pick Arc Warden if you know what you're doing as a carry, but it's probably, as a carry, one of the worst cheesy heroes. I feel like it's more of a mid. That's one of those things I always mention. Is it a mid or is it a carry? It's always hard to know. It can stomp the mid lane, but then it can also feed in the mid lane. It's very weird. Then we have D tier, and we have Luna, who got hit the most, nerfed the most in the last patch, mainly because I think the direct nerfs to her were huge. But then also they nerfed Conda, which was like the main thing that made this hero good. That kind of mix of magic damage plus the right clicks. And now all of that is just worse. I think that's just really what it comes down to, is you don't blow people up and do ridiculous damage once you get to that 20-25 timing with your talents and Conda like you did in the past. I still think this hero is actually somewhat viable. Like, I think you could put SF up to B tier. You could put Luna up to C tier and just bump those heroes up one more tier. I still think they're okay, but I'm putting them here mainly because the win rates are so abysmal now. They just fell off a cliff, and that's, I think, sort of just to exemplify that, or to like represent that, how much these heroes were nerfed and how much that patch did affect them. That's why I'm putting them down here, to kind of just show you how bad they are and how it just, don't think of it as Luna or SF being like super viable anymore like they were last time. Then Faceless Void, just at a bad spot right now. It felt like this hero was good for years and years, and now it's just not good. With everything else, like the facets and the passive changes did not help this hero at all, because I think it was so good for so long when they did introduce that kind of stuff. It just didn't do anything for the hero. And every other hero feels like got something from that. And so Faceless Void just still has not had the buff that it needs to be viable again, like after those facet and passive changes. I still think maybe in like 2K MMR can like destroy some games because the chrono can never be counted out, but that's just that every carry has some kind of version of that, it feels like. Sven, just not good. You just pick DK. Like, pick any hero that has a cleave or something other than Sven. It feels like Sven is the worst of the heroes that have some kind of built-in farming mechanic, to be honest. Then Ricky, the big problem is the opposite with this hero. It just has no farming mechanics, so you have to buy some kind of farming item, and it feels awkward. Kind of like a MK in that way, where it feels like awkward to go Battle Fury. That's the same kind of thing. What are you going to rush Ags? That feels awkward too. I don't even know if rushing Ags like even farms the creep wave that fast, because you don't have much damage. So very awkward. Bloodseeker at a weird spot. It just, what does this hero do? Like, I don't know, like it just ults a Pango, like, you know what I mean? It just feels very weird. Is it a 3 position? Is it a mid? Is it a carry? Are you going for the Ags and getting this like weird shield or something and like life stealing through stuff? It just has no identity, and that's why it's down here. And that's, I think, what's been wrong with the hero for 10 years almost. It feels like it's literally been 10 years that this hero's had an identity. I think it was like a pub stomping hero, very annoying, almost like a Slark in a way, and then they changed it, and they've been changing it for so many years. It just has, I feel like, never had an identity since then. Then Wind Ranger, these kind of carries that are like the universal ranged heroes are kind of dead. This hero's been dead since they nerfed the facet where you just deleted everybody in an AoE, and it's still been that way. Lena, not a carry right now because the right-click build on this hero is kind of dead, because this hero is absolutely broken mid. And you'll see the ranking of that hero tomorrow in the mid-tier list, but this hero is just destroys people with the magic build. And so you're just never going to go right-click build on this hero. You would just always go magic build. Even if you were picking this as a carry, you'd probably still go magic build, to be honest. Naga Siren, more of a support. If anything, honestly, I might just put Naga over here. I think I'm just going to do that because this hero is just a support now. Feels like a terrible carry now. It just does not do what it used to do. Everything has gotten so much better in all these different ways. Better at wave clear, better at clearing illusions, all that kind of stuff. Even like this, I was actually debating putting PL over here, and the only reason I didn't put PL over here was because I still think this is viable in pubs. But to be honest, I think these illusion heroes are just at such a bad spot. This is definitely viable to put them at F tier. Then Pudge. You could pick a carry, but it's not great. Like, it's just better in a lot of different positions. And then same thing with Tiny, better in pretty much every other position, to be honest. Not really a carry. People have been trying to bring carry Tiny back. I think I've seen it a couple times in like pro like streams or something, but I just don't think it's very good. And then with F tier Sniper, just don't pick this hero ever as a carry. Just don't pick the hero. Just stop picking it, guys. It just, I feel like it just griefs games. There was like a patch there where it was like okay in different positions, and it's not good. Stop doing it. And then, like I said, the illusion heroes are just not good right now. Like, everything clears with the illusions. Earthshaker's very good and like actually counters everything now, especially with this like baseball bat thing. And I just feel like overall there's so many heroes that deal so much with these heroes now. There needs to be some kind of change or buff or something with them to make them viable. But the problem with these kinds of heroes is if you buff them too much or even a little bit, they can just suddenly become S tier after being F tier for like, 6 months to a year. So that's the problem. So guys, that is my carry tier list for patch 7.37e. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you agree, disagree with anything here, if you think a hero should be added that I don't have, and look forward to the tier list tomorrow and for the rest of the week for every other position. So thanks everybody for watching. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all those kinds of things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.